Democrat Stephanie Michael Daugherty, and thank you all for joining us this evening. We really appreciate you making time. We are, of course, just a little bit under 3 weeks from Election Day. It's a busy time for you, and again, we just thank you for carving out some of that time for us this evening. The rules are simple. You will each have a 60-second opening and closing statement that will then be followed by 90 seconds to answer questions and a 30-second rebuttal if you would like. We have determined the order of which candidate will be speaking first using a random drawing. Ms. Rasher, you will be going first with your opening statement.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having us all here tonight. This is a very unique format, and we're really excited to be able to answer the questions that have come in from viewers on all of the different Facebook pages that you've collected from. But my message is simple. From the start, I've said that public safety is going to be a key focus of my administration. But outside of public safety, I want to have a strong emphasis on economic growth and development, tailored to talent retention specifically. We've got to make sure that we keep all of those wonderful, talented people here in Evansville to help support our economy and make sure that we are providing good, high-paying jobs for everyone here. Outside of that, though, we know that quality of life and quality of place are two things that are very important for all of our residents. And that goes beyond just our parks and our attractions. It also goes down to our infrastructure. So our roads, our water and sewer, we want to make sure that we have clean drinking water and we have everything else that residents would like.
And I apologize, I should have mentioned we do have a bell that will alert you when you run out of time. Mr. Daugherty, your opening statement, please.
Hi, I'm Michael Daugherty, candidate for Evansville Mayor. I was born and raised here in Evansville, attended North High School. I left here from Evansville and went to Purdue University, where I graduated with my degree in electrical engineering. I worked for a company there in Lafayette with a title of vice president. I worked with adults and children with disabilities. I left there and I taught at Ivy Tech for 2 years as an adjunct instructor. Then I went back to Purdue University to graduate with my MBA. After my MBA, I started my own technology company that I started from scratch. I ran that for 14 years successfully as president and CEO, and was able to sell that business and retire back to Evansville. One of the reasons that I'm running is the same reason that every citizen here understands. Our city has went downhill. Coming back, I grew up riding my bicycle to Garvin Park, going there swimming, all the amenities that Evansville had to offer. We had a safe city. We've seen our city decline from safety to parks, and I will fix that as your next mayor.
And Ms. Terry, your opening statement.
Sure. Thank you again for this opportunity tonight to talk with you about the future of Evansville. I'm a lifelong resident and a community champion. I have served this community for the last 12 years on the Vanderbilt County Council, and I've also served as our local Children's Museum Executive Director for 13 years. But now I'm ready to take my leadership to the next level as your next mayor. I spent this summer talking with many residents across this city about issues that are important to them, from public safety to education, mental health, lack of affordable housing, and the list really goes on and on. But the one thing that I know for sure is there's more work to be done. While there's been progress in our community, we still need to build a city that works for everyone. And I want to be your next mayor to ensure that happens. I've been invested in this community, and it will be no different as your mayor. I have invested and supported infrastructure improvements, business expansion and creation, as well as supported our law enforcement officials, as well as nonprofit organizations in our community. I have served you well, and I would appreciate your support, and I look forward to the conversation today.
All right, let's get into the questions now. Of course, the first question centers around the economy. It's on the minds of many at home. Of course, Evansville is not immune to inflation and other economic challenges, all while, according to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of Evansville has decreased by a little bit more than 1% between 2020 and 2021. The first question for you, Ms. Terry: if elected, what will you do as part of the city's budget to draw business into the city, and how do you plan on helping to increase wages for workers?
Sure. I think the one thing in terms of business growth and expansion is we've got to look at our current zoning codes. And so I would like to establish a blue ribbon commission to bring together contractors and developers, our trades, as well as small and large business owners around the table to talk with our administration about how can we remove some of the red tape. What restrictions do we need to lighten up on, whether that's ensuring that there's complete streets as part of our development, but we need to really look at why is it so difficult to do business in our community and to expand their businesses. We also, I think from a standpoint in terms of jobs, we just need to continue to attract new industry to our community that are paying high wages and higher wages than what we're seeing historically right now in our community. I think we can rely on sources like EREP, who is already our economic development arm, and continue to work with them as a partner. But then as well, workforce development and training is important. And so Work One will be also an excellent partner to ensure, again, that we are providing and making sure that people are prepared to go to work.
Mr. Darty.
One of the things that we need to focus on as a city is to not necessarily look at new all the time. We need to focus on our existing businesses and how we can support them. So one of the issues, I was at the Board of Zoning Appeals today. There was a gentleman wanting to start a new business, and he had to apply for a variance just so he didn't have to pave his parking lot. And he only got a 2-year extension for that. His parking lot cost roughly $10,000 to $11,000 to pave. We need to focus on small to medium businesses and really remove the red tape, as Stephanie said, and remove the zoning restrictions, ease some of the setback requirements, the requirements that are necessary for just turning gravel into asphalt, and maybe even the fire systems that happened at one of the restaurants, bars over on Franklin Street. We need to make sure that we're not just focused on bringing in the large business and whining and dining them that has happened with the current mayor and the EREP. We need to really reach out. Small business is the backbone of our economy. And while I get that the large business brings in a lot of draw, we can easily supply the same workforce with small and medium businesses. And the large businesses always receive a lot of the tax financing, and the small businesses, you can go to the SBA and get help. But as my administration will do, I will make sure that we have a plan to work with small businesses to walk you through that process as we currently do for the large businesses for zoning and getting your business started.
Ms. Rasher, how do you plan on drawing business into the city and potentially increasing wages for workers?
Sure. So one of the things that I would really like to focus on is making sure that we have all of our stakeholders at the table when we're looking at the requirements that businesses often have put on them. So that means bringing developers into the table, bringing the individuals that are starting the businesses, bringing our different boards, whether it be area plan or BZA, to make sure everyone's first and foremost on the same page. I never want a business owner to call City Hall and the first answer they hear is no. I want it to be, maybe they don't know, but they'll get back to them, or maybe it's a resounding yes, and we're going to figure out how to help you along that way. A great resource that we have in our community is EREP with their small business incubator. I believe that's something that can really help get businesses started here and also help our current businesses expand. When it comes to bringing in larger corporations, honestly, I think it's a good thing because it makes us more competitive within the region. It allows us to attract more talent to this region. Usually, they offer higher wages as well. So that's one thing that I would really like to focus on within my administration, but then also speaking to the idea of raising those wages for all of our residents. We have to attract good businesses. I don't want to bring in a big box store that only pays minimum wage. I want to bring in the stores and the businesses that are going to be competitive in this area, and that we can provide a pipeline for employees that, again, can make a high wage.
Mr. Darty, during your one-on-one interview with me, you said, quote, "The local government has a spending problem." Can you help explain further, and if you were to cut the budget if elected, how would you also ensure that that money is going to those in need in the Evansville community?
Yes, Evansville does have a spending problem. We don't have a taxation problem. You look at multiple projects. We want to keep building these parks, and we can't afford to maintain what we currently have. I've said this again, I sound like a revolving door. we want to approve, we did approve, the city council approved $9 million on a Ford Center, $3 million going to a new scoreboard, $3.6 million going to the concessions that are going to be automated kiosks. I was just told by reliable sources that Mayor Winnicky just received the bid for the sewer plant at $300 million. That was supposed to be $50 million. Rejected that, and he hired another consultant that's going to be coming in at $80 million. We have costs there that aren't transparent, that the spending isn't there. We haven't maintained the maintenance for these projects. We've kicked the can down the road, and unfortunately it's on one of us to have to come to the head of the sewer separation. But we spend so much money. We can pave roads that don't need paved, and you go outside anywhere in the city and you can lose cars in potholes. So again, we're spending money on certain areas, certain pet projects that are approved by buddies, and not really focusing on the city as a whole. Downtown has received so much focus in the last 10 years, and the rest of Evansville has been forgotten.
Ms. Terry, I'd like to ask you as well. Do you think Evansville has a spending problem? How do you fix it?
It's really hard for me to say that until I have an opportunity to really do a full assessment of where we are financially. And that's one of the first things that I would love to do, is to bring in an independent consultant to help us look at our budget, look for opportunities where there may be some cost savings. We do a good job on the county side. Our departments are looking for other avenues in terms of the fees that they're gathering and how they supplement the budget, and sometimes, in some regards, there are even grants that are covering positions that free up, again, some dollars in our general fund. And so looking for those type of opportunities on the city side, I think, is something that my approach in terms of finding the best way to ensure, again, that we're presenting not only a balanced budget, but then also that our spending is in control, but then, looking and seeking out for opportunities to continue to grow our budget. Because we know with property tax caps, we're losing nearly, I think, $12 to $15 million in revenue each year. And so, as you can imagine, things are probably very challenging for the city, but that doesn't mean that we don't seek out new opportunities for revenue. But I think it also goes, though, back to the top line and how we develop business, in housing, increasing property tax, and getting that kind of revenue generated by building and developing housing and new business.
And Ms. Rasher, your thoughts on the, quote, spending problem in Evansville, and how would you potentially fix it if there is one?
Sure. I don't necessarily think that there's a spending problem. I think the issues that we're seeing currently are revenue-based. We need to be bringing in more individuals to the city. I would love to have more residents to serve. I want to make sure that we are leveraging all of the different federal and state dollars that are out there, and truly just bringing Evansville to that next level, I think, is what we need to do, because we've always presented a balanced budget to City Council, and I think that's important to note. Of course, I haven't had the opportunity to go through the budget with a fine-tuned comb yet, but I have had the opportunity to review it, and I'm hoping that we can find some additional dollars to save, and again, those different revenue streams are going to be so important.
30-second rebuttal. Anyone?
Yes. So day one, I've said this many, many times, we will have a full forensic audit of not only our city finances, but of our parks finances, what we are spending money on, and why we can't afford to maintain the stuff we have. The problem isn't additional revenue. That means higher taxes. I get that we need more homes, we need more businesses that will produce more revenue, but revenue as it sits is higher taxes.
And still on the economy, just because this is such an important topic for the constituents of Evansville and really in the nation, I'm curious about, after a recent nationwide search, current Mayor Lloyd Winnicky was selected to lead the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership. First question, and this will go to you, Ms. Rasher, how do you view that organization, and then how do you hope to collaborate with your predecessor if you are potentially elected?
Sure, absolutely. I am going to take just a second, though, to rebuttal the last,
sure,
if that's all
sure,
right.
30 seconds. 30 seconds, go ahead.
Sure. But to speak to the point of higher taxes, increasing revenue in Evansville does not mean higher taxes for our citizens. What it means is bringing in more business, bringing in more residents so that we have a larger pool to pull from. It also means seeking out more federal and state dollars that are already being used. So again, I want to make sure that that narrative is clear. I have no intention of raising taxes, and I am a Republican, so I think that kind of goes with the territory. But would you like me to answer the second question?
60 seconds on the new EREP leadership and how you view that organization. How do you hope to collaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think EREP is a wonderful organization here in Evansville, but also, outside of just Evansville, it's regional. So we've got an ability to partner with the cities around us to leverage all of the resources and all of the talent within Southern Indiana and even over into Henderson. So the new leadership, of course, is the current mayor, Lloyd Winnicky, will be transitioning over there at the beginning of the year. I think that he has a good handle on all of the ready dollars and ways that we can use those dollars throughout our community. And I look forward to doing more with not just Mayor Winnicky, but everyone over at EREP, because again, their services are great, and I think that they're doing wonderful things here in Evansville.
Ms. Terry, your thoughts on potential collaboration with EREP if elected?
Yeah, I've said before that it's important that we continue to utilize EREP as our economic development arm. In identifying what new business can come to our new industries to come into our community, but also to support our local businesses, small and large. EREP offers a number of services. I was a part of, when it originally formed, I was on the steering committee or part of the initial board. So I definitely am invested in the work that they are doing, and they have an outstanding team now, and I know that will continue. Definitely, even with the new appointment of Josh Armstrong as the Senior Vice President of Economic Development, he's done a tremendous job downtown, and I think that skill set is going to carry forth with his work at EREP. And I think they're really in an excellent position to really maximize opportunity dollars that we can bring back to the city from the state and federal level. We've seen that through the READY initiative and the collaboration that it took to garner those dollars. And I think really with EREP at the helm of that work, that's what made it possible.
And Mr. Darty, your thoughts on an EREP collaboration with the mayor's new leadership now in January?
Yeah, the mayor's new leadership, that nationwide search. Give him a second to get the camera. That nationwide search was the biggest joke in City Hall. Clearly, they did not do a nationwide search. It was already out that Lloyd Winnicky was going to take that position when they were supposedly going through the nationwide search. My opponents here want to talk about the E is for everyone and making sure that we have diversity, and he was already picked for that position before they even looked outside. The NFL has something called the Rooney Rule, where you have to interview a certain a number of minorities. I'd like to know how many minorities were interviewed for that position. But that's the transparency that I talk with Evansville. The good old boy got put into the position for this nationwide search. I would like to see the transparency, see who all was identified for that position. On that note, EREP is good for our region. We need an economic wing that goes out and assists with building our economic development and finding those partnerships. The city of Evansville pays $300,000 to EREP, as well as the county, while adjoining places pay $50,000.
That's a wrap. 30-second rebuttal from either Ms. Rasher or Ms. Terry. Okay, let's move along. I know we spent a little bit of time on the economy, but I think it's critically important. Let's talk about the state of our city parks. And this question, we'll start with you first, Ms. Rasher. Evansville has been operating now without a fully appointed parks director since mid-2021. And obviously some of these parks are in need of attention. What are your plans to clean up and make repairs to the current park infrastructure? And then what other improvements could potentially be made?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think I would like to really leverage our Parks Foundation and then also utilize our Parks Board. I want to get more people around the table to talk about all of the different parks that we have in Evansville, including the small pocket parks, and look at how they're doing compared to some of the larger parks that we have. We've got a $12 million budget for all of Parks and Recreation. Half of that goes to the zoo. So we really only have $6 million over the course of the year that's allocated to all of the maintenance to our parks. We've got 4 46 parks technically, but then we have other buildings, so we're closer to really about 67, I believe, total assets there. We're looking at the Swanders Ice Arena, 6 pools, 3 golf courses. I mean, there are a lot of amenities that we have in Evansville. So prioritizing that list and how we go down and we maintain these projects is going to be important, but then also looking at the different kind of corporate partnerships and seeing, what organizations would like to come and walk alongside the city and take some, ownership over and help us with some of these wonderful assets that we have. We've seen it done before. The Kiwanis, actually, they have their emblem right there at the opening of Garvin Park. They've been wonderful partners in the past, and I would, again, love to leverage other either nonprofits or businesses to make sure that we do the best we can for our citizens.
Ms. Terry, your thoughts on the parks and how they can potentially be improved in the city?
Yeah, I think I'm excited about the opportunity to do some work in our local parks. I mean, again, having worked at the Children's Museum, being in a creative space to develop, play areas for children and families is something I take great pride in. And so we now have a 5-year parks plan. And within that plan, it's outlined some of the needed repairs and maintenance and new ideas that we now need to garner some dollars to support that work. And that will probably be my first approach, is how do we rally, again, all the stakeholders in the community. We say the business community is invested in, quality amenities and quality of place. Our schools are invested in how we take care of our parks. And so gathering everybody together, launching a huge effort with our Parks Foundation, fundraising effort to really invest in our parks in the right way and get them up to the standard that we all can be proud of. I mean, that's really it's going to take some time to do that, but I think being intentional about it is really what I want to do. And of course, we'll have to identify the right leadership for that department that understands how to manage a park and recreational department and facilities, because again, we have a lot of assets that we have to maintain. But it's important that, one, we follow the plan that we've spent quite a bit of time investing in, and follow that and ensure that we move the needle on growth in our local parks.
And Mr. Daugherty, your thoughts on parks in the city?
Yes, parks are obviously a very, very sore point for me, and I've really focused on those, going around doing videos at them. I was at Fiesta Evansville this past weekend and took pictures of the open outlets there. The toilets are horrible. Anthony Oates Parks have holes in the roof. So while we have all these great parks, we're not maintaining them. We're building new. The Lamasco Skate Park is in complete disarray, and we're building a new skate park instead of maintaining what we have. And the Mayor Winnicky is the one that had the Parks Director position open, and it was his judgment to choose the past Parks Director under his leadership. Deputy Mayor Steve Schaefer was put into the position of Assistant Parks Director. He has done a phenomenal job working with what he has, but his hands are tied on everything there. And when you talk about maintaining things and the parks, I'm extremely passionate about it because I grew up in parks when I was younger here in Evansville. I went to Garvin's Park a lot. And I know Stephanie talked about her experience at Children's Museum. I hope the maintenance that happens on the equipment and the things that SEMO don't translate into our city parks, because they have not been maintained. You just go to the website and you can see all the reviews on that, all of the exhibits that have been shut down for months. As your mayor, I will put a priority on our city parks.
Ms. Terry, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Because the fact of the matter is that their exhibits are not broken. We offer a very high quality space. Yes, we know where our pain points are, and we've addressed those quite immediately. It does take time, depending on how those exhibits are engineered and developed, that we might use an outside party to come in. But I'll tell you, I don't know if you've heard the news, but we recently just announced a major campaign to do an overhaul because we know our exhibits are beyond life. And that's the level of commitment that we need to do for our parks. There's no play structure that can last more than 10, 15 years. Our exhibits at the museum really should have only a span of a 7-year time frame. And so we've invested. We know what we need to do, and we're taking those steps to do that. And so those type of intentional planning and understanding of play spaces is some skill sets that I'm going to carry forth to make sure that our parks are well maintained. But the piece that's important of that is the funding is a necessity in order to ensure that happens.
Okay, let's move on now. Another major topic in the city, public safety and crime, of course. Last year, according to the Evansville Police Department, there were 17 victims of homicide in the city. EPD says that gangs are oftentimes a very big problem. So first question, and this will go to you first, Mr. Daugherty. How do you reduce crime, and then how would you fight the narcotic and drug issues to make Evansville a safer community?
First and foremost, you have to have a fully staffed police force. We have 22 open positions, as last told by the FOP, and we don't have a homicide department. As I was talking before this, that's been a topic for over 5 years. We need to make sure that we have a specialized department to focus on that, because we have become an extremely violent city. We're ranked 40th in the nation for violent crime. We have to make sure that we step up, fully staff our police force. We are well into the double digits, 40 plus, ranked on officer pay in the state of Indiana against other municipalities. That is sad, being the third largest city in Indiana. We need to make sure that we work with state and local departments, Indiana State Police, Vanderbilt County Sheriff's Department, Posey County, Warwick County, to fight this drug pandemic. There is an opioid settlement lawsuit that's coming down. Evansville and Vanderbilt County have already received some money from that. There's many more coming out over the next 20 years. We have to take that money and use it towards mental health, partnering with agencies, with our Vanderbilt County Health Department, with our sheriff, and with our prosecutor's office to make sure that we fight this epidemic. There's opioid settlement funds out there. They're coming in. Evansville has already received them. We have 9 mental health beds now in the new jail, and there will be 32 substance abuse beds. And that's how we tackle the substance abuse problems here in Evansville.
Ms. Rasher, how do you reduce crime, and how would you fight the narcotic and drug issues to make the city safer?
Sure. So making sure that we're investing in public safety first and foremost. One of the things that I've said since day one is that I would like to increase the training budget and to ensure that all of our police officers have the tools necessary to perform all of the duties that they're requested. We also need to look at our compensation, because we unfortunately have had officers that have left for other positions and outside agencies because we haven't been competitive with our pay rates. It's something that I'm willing to look into. It's something that I'm very excited to negotiate with the FOP, and making sure that everyone feels as though they're being valued, they have the training, they have those tools and resources that they need to be successful. Whenever we have a police force that has that good morale and that's ready to go and has all of these tools, I think we're going to see more of an impact throughout our community. But don't get me wrong when I say, yes, it can help, but we've already got a tremendous police force. We have new problems in our community, and those problems are centered around, unfortunately, addiction, mental health issues, and a lot of new drugs. 12 years ago, we had the meth task force. Every news article, it seemed like we were talking about meth on the streets and these new meth labs that were being found. We don't hear about those anymore. There's still some that are out there, but right now our problem in our community is fentanyl, and we have to figure out a way that we're going to stop this.
And Ms. Terry, I'm curious on your thoughts on reducing crime.
Well, I think it's our number one job as a government is a safer community, and I don't think it's going to take one approach to addressing crime in our community. So not only is it about continued outreach and our police being visible in the community, it's also us addressing the root causes of crime. There are a number of coalitions and task force already established around mental health, substance abuse and drug addiction, housing and poverty. Those all play a factor into the crime that we see today and the crime that we'll even see in the future if we don't, again, to put more intentionality on those things. I think also when we look around the city too, removing those areas of blight and things that are magnets for crime will also be important in addressing those issues. And then just continued engagement with community outreach and prevention and work with young people is also something that would be a part of what I'd like to see done. One of the things I've put in my Forward Together plan is a Safe Summer initiative, and that we've done the Dust Ball and in partnership with the local police department, but I think expanding that, engaging our nonprofit organizations that are already serving our youth population and expanding, how do we make sure that at 10 and 11 o'clock at night there's activity going on that's safe recreation for our youth, that they don't have to go into doing crime-like activity is something that I'm hoping to put some emphasis on. And, you know, I think the other thing too, I mean, darn it.
30-second rebuttal, anyone?
Yes.
Sure. Right.
So, since day one, I have made sure that I informed everybody that I would make a change at the police chief. I met with FOP officials, and one of the things, Ms. Rasher will tout her FOP endorsement, but she didn't get that FOP endorsement at the primary. When she first met with them, she said, no, I'm not going to make a change with Billy Bolin. I don't want to fire him, not understanding that demoting him back to his original position before chief is what would happen. I said I would make a change at both the police chief and the fire chief. The fire chief has resigned, but I will make sure that I create a commission to find a new chief with 84% saying they had no confidence in him. And it will be comprised of rank and file members as well as citizens of Evansville, because it's your input that needs to help select our leaders.
Sure, I'll do a little fact check there. So in the primary, that's correct, I was not endorsed by the FOP. They were looking for a change in leadership, and I said that my stance on every department head is that it will be, essentially, I'm an equal opportunity employer. Everyone can reapply for the positions, and new people can apply for those positions as well, and I will pick the best candidate. In some instances, it will be the same leadership, but in others, there will be changes. But that's something that I will not make a decision on until I'm elected mayor.
And I do want to add, as I was cut off, that I think it's definitely important that we also make sure that we do what we can as it relates to the pay for our local law enforcement officials, as well as making sure they have the adequate training and equipment to do their work, and think about the use of technology and how that's evolving, and incorporating that into the work that they do. It's a tough job to be on the streets, and so we want to be sure, again, that they have everything that they need to provide a safe community for our residents.
And you mentioned pay, and this next one, we'll start with you, Ms. Terry. Would pay raises for local law enforcement be a goal of yours? And secondly, would those same raises be matched for all other public safety personnel within Evansville, firefighters, dispatchers, animal control officers, or does law enforcement take precedence?
Well, they're all partners in keeping our community safe, and so I view them really almost equally. And so I definitely, yes, I want to work towards pay increases for public safety officials. And so again, that includes EMT, that includes a number of individuals. And so it's going to take some time, because again, we've got to do an overall assessment, see what we have available now. I'm sure that's been combed, already by our current administration. But again, having a fresh perspective and outlook on that, and an outside independent, viewer, I think that will help hopefully find some opportunities where we can make some movement, but I think it's going to take over time. Same thing on the county side. There's been significant increase done, but that took some time to get to that point. But again, it's working in partnership and in dialogue with the right folks to make sure that happens.
Mr. Daugherty.
Absolutely. We must make sure that we do better for our local first responders. That includes ACO, dispatch, firefighters, and police officers. We have to make sure that we follow what everybody else is doing, or we're going to lose them to other municipalities. I'm the only candidate up here that stood up at City Council and chose and went against City Council and said the mayor does not need a $35,000 raise. The other two candidates are welcoming that raise with open arms. Our clerk didn't need a 45% increase, at $29,000. There's money that we can get for our first responders, but last year's budget had upwards of 28.33% raises for the department heads, all while everybody else received 1%. That will not happen in my administration. I will make sure that we have fair and equitable raises among all staff. And on top of that, I have also vowed that I'm not accepting the salary. I will be donating my salary if I'm elected mayor to nonprofits or departments within the city that actually needs it.
Ms. Rasher, your thoughts on pay raises for local law enforcement, and particularly I'm curious if you think that the local law enforcement takes precedence versus those other groups such as firefighters, dispatchers, and animal control officers.
Sure. Something to keep in mind too is that it really doesn't matter what I think, because there are unions that negotiate this as well. So I can say, yeah, everyone should get a 3% raise or a 7% raise, but if the Teamsters or the firefighters union or the FOP come in and say, okay, you're proposing a 4% raise for all city employees, including us, but we're not accepting that. We want 5%. And we renegotiate other terms and they get that 5%, it's probably because we've had to take something else out of their budget to get to that. So none of us can sit up here and say, yes, absolutely, this is how it's going to be, equitable across the board, whenever we have several unions that the city does work with. And that's okay. That is their bargaining unit, and they need a seat at the table, and I welcome that, and I welcome those negotiations. But then it just makes our job more interesting on the city side, where we have to find increased revenue so that we can pay people a good wage for no matter what the job is that they're doing.
Let's do 30 seconds for this next question, final in the series of law enforcement related questions. Ms. Terry has been endorsed by the two top law enforcement officials in Vanderbilt County and Evansville, Sheriff Noah Robinson, EPD Chief Billy Bullen, while Ms. Racer, you have been endorsed by the FOP. I'm curious, and we'll start with you, Ms. Racer. What do you say to those rank and file officers who still might be on the fence about potentially voting for you in the upcoming election? What's your message to them? 30 seconds.
For me?
Yes, Ms. Racer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said.
No, I apologize.
I saw you pointing over here. No, I would just hope that with the FOP support and then also with the endorsement from the firefighters union as well, that you will trust me. You know that I have your best interest at heart, that I will do everything that I can for the city to ensure that we're moving forward and we're safe.
Mr. Daugherty, what do you have to say? You've got the FOP endorsing Ms. Racer, EPD Chief, and the Vanderbilt County Sheriff endorsing Ms. Terry. What do you say to the law enforcement community?
So they know where my support lies. They've seen me fighting for their raises. They've seen me at the FOP PAC night. They've seen what I want to do with supporting them. So while the PACs, which is only 5 members that vote on that for the FOP based on their support, the rank and file officers, the ones that are out there, boots on the ground, really know and are supporting, many of them are supporting me. So that is what I'm appreciative of. I don't need any endorsements that are always partisan, Republican or Democrat.
And Ms. Terry, your thoughts, 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's simple. My record has proven that I have supported law enforcement for the last 12 years, and it will be no different as your mayor.
All right, let's move along. In the last several years, this question first goes to you, Mr. Daugherty. We've been through a pandemic, a home explosion, a warehouse fire. How would you handle a major crisis or emergency situation, such as a natural disaster or public health crisis, as the leader of Evansville, if elected?
Well, as the leader, the first thing you have to do is identify professionals that can help with these situations. You partner with FEMA, emergency management. You bring everybody in. You have to have a plan ahead of time. So just like you plan for disasters, schools plan lockdowns, we have to plan ahead, and we have to do it from an administration standpoint and have key people in those roles. The mayor has to be a champion and be calm, cool, and collected and make sure that everything's done in a disaster. And one of the things that I would do is I'd identify that, and we would practice that from a perspective of, okay, we're going to go through this just like everybody else practices their emergency drills. Hopefully you citizens at home practice fire escapes, have great fire detectors, and what happens if you get trapped in a room. Same thing for our city. We must have a plan. We must have it in writing, and we must practice it to make sure that everybody knows what would happen. We can be anything from an earthquake to a terrorist threat, anything. We need to be ready for that. And I will be ready to lead day one to make sure that we have those plans in place.
Ms. Racer, how do you handle a crisis if elected as the mayor?
Sure. So those plans are in place currently. We have several different manuals, while they're paper and not digital, I will say, our city has done a very good job on planning for natural disasters and catastrophic events in these emergency situations. So that's one thing that, knowing that we have a lot of these plans in place, I would like to at least review them on a yearly basis to make sure that we are using best practices. But a lot of it comes back to relationships. I want to make sure that I have the relationships with all of the stakeholders in our community to make sure no matter what the emergency is, we can respond and we know who to reach out to. That was something during the pandemic that cities around Indiana were looking at Evansville and mimicking what we were doing because our mayor had such a good relationship with both of the hospitals here in town, and they were able to feed information, back and forth through, 2 different systems to our health department and then to our mayor's office, along with, the EVSC and many other individuals that were in play. So making sure we have those relationships, making sure that we're staying up to date on all of our emergency management procedures will be imperative.
And Ms. Terry?
Yeah, I think collaboration is key. And we saw that during the pandemic, and just, again, in how our community came together to respond to the needs of the community, but then also just being able to have adaptive policies. I had the privilege working for the Indiana State Department of Health, where it was my responsibility to work with local health departments we sat around and created these tabletop drills and demonstrations for worst case scenarios. And so that's something that I would definitely carry over and would love to work with our local public safety officials around, again, role playing what would happen, and do we have the right tools and supplies? Where do we get things from? I think will be a part of, again, how we prepare for future crises.
Any rebuttal? The next question goes to you first, Ms. Rasher. It's a question about the responsibility for representing and serving a diverse community. Obviously, Evansville is home to people from various racial, ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic backgrounds. I'm curious if you can share how your approach to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the city of Evansville. How do you plan to ensure that the needs and concerns of all residents are addressed in your administration if elected?
Well, I think that goes back to relationships, as I had just mentioned earlier. I don't, sit in a bubble by any means. I've always been very active in our community in different pockets. I've been a volunteer for OLA for several years. I've been active within different nonprofits and, reaching out to different congregations as well throughout this campaign just to learn more about our community. And that's something that being a champion for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is very near and dear to my heart. So I've sat on different DEIB councils. I'm currently a member of the National Association for Black Accountants to ensure that we're doing good outreach efforts, to all of the different individuals that could possibly want to start a career in accounting, which I know isn't the most exciting career, but for people like me, it gives me an opportunity to show individuals of all walks of life what we can do together.
Ms. Terry?
Yes, I will always be an advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion in our community and promote that everywhere I go, and be sure that we have diversity and inclusion in terms of, ensuring they have a voice and a seat at the table as well. There are a number of boards and commissions, and again, we want to make sure that we're utilizing everybody in our community to be a part of the decision making that has to take place. I think the other thing, the mayor for several years, even beyond this administration, has had a celebration of diversity. Those are the type of events we want to continue and enhance moving into the next administration. And I'm pretty proud of just what I've done during this campaign. I've been really intentional about making sure that you saw diversity in action. And I've spent, time talking with various, communities throughout this, throughout our city, and making sure that they know that, one, I'm here, that I'm going to listen to them and try to address some of the needs and concerns that they have, so that so we have a better community overall. Because we know that if we want to continue to attract business, we've got to be open and welcoming to all people. And that's what I want to make sure that I promote every step of the way.
Mr. Darty, your thoughts?
Yeah, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. All you have to do is walk down the halls of the City Hall and you will get no further away from diversity there. There's no diversity. I've went door to door. I've talked to a lot of citizens, and a lot of the concerns they have is, oh, I've applied for a job. I never even got an interview. I was fully qualified. That goes back to the favor system of people getting hand-selected for jobs within the City Hall. And I would make sure that we have a diversity officer that goes through all of those applications. Everything is transparent and published. That's one of the benefits I have as being a third party, is I'm not going to stack the administration with all R's or all D's. I get to choose the best person for every position. And I will make sure that I will have a very diverse cross-section of our citizens in the City Hall and in all positions and boards and commissions. One of the things that I'm going to do on our appointed boards and commissions is some are paid, some aren't. They are all going to be removed from any stipends, and they're going to be non-paid. That way the person is working for the city and not just for a paycheck. And again, it won't be the country club buddies getting in there that live out in the county, Warwick County, just doing it because there's a little paycheck with it. It will be the citizens of Evansville working to make it better for you.
30-second rebuttal, anyone?
Sure, just to clarify a fact there real quick. Some of those appointments to city or county boards, you actually can't take those stipends away depending on the overarching body. So I'm a member of the Alcoholic Beverage Board. I was appointed by the mayor. It is a county board, though, as a whole, but it reports up to the state. And the state has actually said that we are not allowed to forego any kind of salary. Now we get $2 per, I believe, permit. So it equates to be about $15 a meeting. So, not a lot of money there, but just to clarify, though.
Thank
and
you.
along those lines, too, you also
Sure.
want to keep in mind, too, the board, both county has appointments to many of these boards as well as in commissions, and so you both have to be in agreement to make those kind of changes.
I'd like a quick rebuttal.
Sure, 20 seconds.
One of the things, obviously Ms. Racher is on the alcohol board. She just went to a pretty important one where she forgot to open the email for a vote on that was pretty important. So that was an oversight that should happen. But we talk about these things. Last night, they don't have a country club buddies to put in, but I just got a quick question, Natalie. Are you a member of the Evansville Country Club?
And Ms. Racher, we're going to move on from that question unless you care to respond. 20 seconds if you want to respond.
I'm sorry?
20 seconds.
No, I would just like to clarify that while I am a member of the Alcoholic Beverage Board, as mentioned, the email that I did not open, it's not exactly the case. I didn't receive my packet of information, and I abstained from all votes on that last meeting that I attended because I was doing my due diligence to make sure that I wasn't going forth and making an assessment that I didn't have information for.
Okay, Mr. Daugherty, we're gonna start with you on this question. If elected, how would you make sure that your administration remains transparent to the citizens of Evansville throughout your tenure? What measures specifically would you put in place to prevent corruption and promote good governance?
That is pretty much what I'm running on, is transparency. A lot of the things that have happened behind closed doors is concerning to me. There's been leases of our parks, 50-year leases, that have happened without public notice. There are a lot of concerns with the Ford Center, the naming of the streets, the additional revenue going in through Venue Works. Loans that I've been told by reliable sources are happening at Venue Works, and Evansville's paying a $500,000 loan back across 60 months. That's the transparency that I will bring to you, the citizens. And one of the things that all elected officials need to learn in Evansville is that they work for you, the taxpayers. It's not the other way around. When the people fear the government, we have tyranny. But when the government fears the people, we have liberty. And I can guarantee you that under my administration, everything's going to be transparent. And I will not be hiding any of these deals that are going on.
Ms. Terry, what measures would you potentially put in place to prevent corruption, promote good governance?
Yeah, I think one of the things, again, is having community conversations and being visible and engaged in the community is one way to be transparent. I think it stopped during the pandemic, but the current administration had a mayor's traveling city hall. And very similarly to what I've been doing with my listening sessions all over the community is, again, providing information, giving people an opportunity to ask questions, to ask department head questions, again, so that, that they feel that they're a part of the decision making, that they have their answers and questions met. But then also we know that annually there's a state of the city. I think in addition to just doing that in that particular format, that again, we also find other platforms that we can share, again, the update on what's happening in our community. But then if there's future plans to share what's on the horizon, I think sharing those nuggets, I'd love to explore, getting some kind of tool where there's some polling and you can, poll the residents of the community periodically when there's projects coming up to just gauge the interest and thoughts from the community, and not wait till it's, a full master plan process, but just maybe something small, again, so that people feel that they're a part of the decision making and know how their tax dollars are being utilized and what the vision for the future is. And then the final piece, I want to spend some time doing a strategic plan for the city. I think many of the times we're in crisis mode and reactionary, but just pause a little bit and think about, what do we see for the future of our community, and seek input from the community as part of that process.
Ms. Fisher, how do you ensure your administration remains transparent?
Sure. So some of the things that I've talked about previously is making sure that we all have an opportunity to bring the best and the brightest into City Hall. So we have an opportunity to leverage technology to, whenever individuals are retiring out, we can look at these specific jobs and we can decide what pieces can be pushed in other directions. Can some be taken over by technology? And with that extra capacity that we then have on the financial side, then we can pay people a better wage. And whenever we have the ability to pay individuals more, we'll have the ability to bring in even higher caliber residents, hopefully, to work for the city. And so whenever we have those great, high-performing candidates working for the city, that transparency will begin to become more and more easy.
All right, and I see that we're running out of time here, so let's get to our closing 60-second summaries. We're going to start with Ms. Terry.
Sure. Thank you so much again for this opportunity today, and for those that have tuned in on social media. I have served this community for the last 12 years, and I've served you well. I've served and been engaged in this community and invested, and I'm excited about the opportunity to take my leadership to the mayor's office, and I hope that I would have your support this November or before, because I think we have a huge opportunity. This is an historic election. We're potentially the first female to be elected as the chief executive of this city, and I want to be that person. Began because I have a proven record that I have been able to support business creation and expansion, support of law enforcement, support of some of our nonprofit organizations that are doing great work as it relates to mental health and substance abuse addiction, as well as our arts and culture sector, as well as a vibrant downtown. You can count on me to be committed to meeting your needs. But we can't do it alone. At least I can't do it alone. And I hope that you'll join me so that we can continue to move Evansville together forward.
Mr. Daugherty, your 60-second final message to the voters.
I have dived into the budget. I have copies of everything. I filed public records requests to see what's going on in our city. And I will be fiscally conservative. I am the only candidate up here that's been CEO of an organization for 14 years. I haven't just said this misnomer that, I'm a business person. I have the proven track record as a CEO. One of the things that I have shared publicly is I stood up against Centerpoint at the IURC meeting. The only candidate, the only elected official. I will fight on behalf of you, the citizens. My campaign finance reports come out tomorrow. Please don't vote until you see what's on those. Mine, I've spent just a little over $29,000 on my campaign. Miss Terry's come in today. She spent $253,000. When Miss Rasher's comes in, I would expect that to be well over both Stephanie's and mine combined. So again, I'm in this race, and I've spent a fraction of the budget on my campaign. Who would you rather run a $471 million budget? People over politics.
And Ms. Rasher, your final message to the voters.
Yes, Well, first, thank you for tuning in tonight. I know that you all have the opportunity to do a lot of other things, but whenever you're investing in your community and you're listening to the people who want to help lead it in the right direction, I just have to say kudos to you. I'm from Evansville. I'm a native. I'm a business leader. I've had the opportunity to work in several different sectors. I've had the opportunity to become a mother. I'm a wife. And at the end of the day, I just want what is best for our community and its residents. I believe strongly that public safety is going to be a linchpin in the years moving forward. I want to make sure that we focus on that, but also on economic growth and development, talent retention, and of course, like I said, that quality of life aspect, including some of the things that are unseen with our infrastructure and the needs to maintain that.
All right. Well, that concludes this evening's Town Hall Forum. Reminder, Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. I'd like to thank all of the candidates, Libertarian Michael Daugherty, Republican Natalie Rasher, Democrat Stephanie Terry. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you to Evansville Watch and Evansville Aerial, and of course to the McCullough Library here at Washington Square Mall for hosting us, and to the viewers at home. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.